We begin with our keynote speaker, Jorge Ponce Dawson. Jorge is the director of Broadway Malian Madrid, where he leads projects in Spain, Europe, North Africa, and South America. Jorge has 35 years of professional experience and is the author of landmark projects in the commercial center area, including FAN Mallorca, Torre Sevilla, Terrazas de Mayo, and Mall of Sfax in Tunisia. As an architect, Jorge specializes in retail, urbanism, mixed use, and residential projects, and is a prolific speaker at various international fora on topics like the city of the future or retail of the future. He is the creator of clubdelecturas.com, the first global reading and debate community in Spanish, which today has more than 2,000 members. Also, he's co-founder of Broadway Malian think tank that explores ways to move forward towards more humane and sustainable cities. Please join me in welcoming Jorge Ponce Dawson.
Proximity, the smartest way to achieve resilience. I'm Jorge Ponce Dawson. I want to say first, thank you very much to Miami University, the sponsors of this great event, and especially to my friends of Double C. Thank you for this invitation. When preparing this chat, I thought that I had to use my two faces. The corporate one as architect and board director of Broadway Malian, but as well my alternative one, if you want, as director of a reading society called Club de Lecturas that I created 7 years ago. I will explain it why. This is our global presence in Broadway Malian. It's an international studio, headquarters in London, 13 studios around the world, mainly focused in Europe, Middle East, Asia, and Latin America. And I'm based in Madrid, looking after projects in Southern Europe, Northern Africa, and Spanish Latin America. In Broadway Malian, I'm selling creativity. I'm selling innovative thinking. But how could I be sure that we are fully aware of last trends in a moment of terrible disruption? That's the origin of Club de Lecturas. Club de Lecturas is my activity of the free time. 7 years ago, I decided to put it together. And with the pandemic, it became virtual and global, and suddenly we had 2,000 members getting together every Saturday to discuss about essays that help us to understand where we are and where we go. So I'm taking advantage of that to have enough feedback and being innovative enough and creative in Broadway Malian. So it's a win-win combination between my corporate phase and my private life. I propose to go backwards to the starting of the last century, 100 years of evolution of the urban narrative, because at that time the cities were seen as a source of disease, poverty, and unsafety. This is a picture that reflects that feeling, working class children in Paris in 1900. It was in Paris when one of our gurus of urban design and architecture, Le Corbusier, found a solution. The solution was simple: to destroy Paris and rebuild it on healthier basis. We were lucky that it didn't happen. That's the reason of Bill Radies in 1930. The idea was to make the city livable in terms of air and light and sun, separating the buildings and distributing the uses in an ordered way. And how to move around, taking advantage of this new technological invention, the car, as a kind of a universal mobility solution. We will be able to go everywhere around cities, so we need to give priority to cars to move around. As well, these ideas were connected with the zoning concept. That is, that the old cities were a problem because they mix up the uses, so we need to do a kind of a prophylactic intervention, separating uses. That implies we need to extend cities in the territory, and we did it. We did it all along the 20th century using this concept of zoning as the remediation of the old and chaotic cities. Of course, how to go from one corner to the other? By car. And we have to create the infrastructure for that to happen and give them priority. In order to materialize our dream, which was to build our own house in the surroundings with a garden, and that was the dream of the new growing middle class. Even if we had to go very far away, for example, in this residential urbanization in the surroundings of Sao Paulo, which is 2 hours and 45 minutes from the downtown. Looking backwards, I'm not sure that we became healthier. That was the intention, but the result is not convincing. 21st century started with a kind of a belief in technology. Technology will save us, so don't worry about that. We thought that everything could be smart. The people, the environment, the living, mobility, economy, environment. Even cars could be driverless and work better and driven by us. And we could, through technology, improve the reality, which is not rich enough, so we can augment it to make it more vibrant. In summary, we can apply a second layer of technology on top of the existing urban fabric to make it sustainable. And that was a dream. We were in the middle of that dream, and what happened? We wake up. We wake up crashing against the Great Recession in 2007, 2008. And we discovered that that endless growing model didn't work. The Great Recession was an inflection point, and we changed all the way of thinking. And this is when I start to recommend some readings. For example, this English philosopher that with this book, The Silence of Animals, is telling us that despite we think that in technology and in science we are continuously growing, which is true, that's not the case in terms of politics, socially and economically. We are constantly crashing against the same stone. So we are in a series of cycles that end with a crash and we have to start again. And looking backward in the last 100 years, it was the case, and you can read it in this fantastic book. As well, we started to question about the notion of growth, because the system was based on that endless growth. And reality is that the endless growth crashed against the limits of the planet. And because after the Great Recession, we took consciousness of the damage we were doing to the planet, we started to doubt about the idea of prosperity pending on the idea of growth. So certain thinkers like Tim Jackson, a professor of economy in Surrey University in the south of London, started to explore the idea of prosperity without growth. During that second decade of the 21st century, we were very creative as a human being, developing a series of tools and goals, establishing goals towards the future, trying to save us from the total crash in climate terms. And we put together the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. As well, it was crucial. The climate conference in Paris in 2015 was an inflection point, really. And especially the new urban agenda, the year after, in 2016, because it became like a kind of a Bible for urban designers toward the future. It was exactly the same time when I put together Club de Lecturas. Was that debate climate that provoked me to do it. And it was exactly the same climate that provoked Carlos Moreno, this is the connection with Medellin of my chat, when he put together and announced the idea of the 15-minute city from Paris. It's interesting because Carlos Moreno is not an architect, he's not a urban designer. He's coming from the mathematical and the robotics fields. That was the reason why he was working on creating a platform, a digital platform for smart cities in 2005. And experiencing all that process, and he arrived to the conclusion that technology alone was not able to sort out all the problems. There were certain issues connected with the distribution of uses in the territory that were unsustainable in themselves, and we need to review them. And that model based on cars going from one corner to the other, the zoning, and all that were part of the problem. So he developed this idea of put the proximity as the center of the new plan and get the scenarios of our lives closer to reduce the displacements and become more sustainable. It's important to underline that the driver of this thinking was his concern about the climate change and the certainty that technology alone was unable to sort it out. We changed fully our theoretical reference in terms of urban design. And we discarded Le Corbusier and embraced Jane Jacobs as the new main reference. Yangel is talking about her as the new grandmother of the new urbanism. So we started to read these chaps, Charles Montgomery connecting the happiness with the good urban design, or Richard Sennett connecting this new urbanism with ethical reason, or as well the books by Carlos Moreno. All these books we read it in our reading society. As well, I put together a forum to discuss about the city's urban debates, together with my colleague Magdalena Plosikiewicz, which is a philosopher and sociologist specialized in city issues, between Madrid and Barcelona, and it's very successful. In parallel, my colleagues in the Anglo-Saxon world, my colleagues in Broadway Malian, were focusing on another idea which confluenced very gently with the 15-minute city, which is this idea of the transport-orientated development. So superimposed to the existing urban fabric a new network of public transportation and make from each station a new polycenter and a new 15-minute city. That's the work we have to do now, to transform the extended city we built during the 20th century into a series of polycentric cities with a 15 minutes model. That's the work we are doing, and that's most of the work we are doing in Europe right now. This is the model, to create transit neighborhoods. Of course, we need to say bye-bye to zoning. Zoning was a total mistake. We need to embrace mixed use and try to spread out mixed use everywhere in every single plot in the planet. This is a sample of a project we are doing of mixed use in Morocco, in Casablanca. As well, another trend is to put in the center the landscape and the outdoors, because it's a lot more sustainable. And this is a kind of shopping resort we are now doing in a lot of places. This is a sample in the south of Italy. As well, it's important to recognize that there is a change in the urban policy, and there are mayors and politicians embracing this new narrative. And I was very pleased to listen to the mayor of Miami yesterday, because I saw that she was in the same narrative as, for example, Ana Hidalgo in Paris, with the advice of Carlos Moreno, or Ada Colau in Barcelona. And it's not casual they are female, because the gender perspective is part of the new narrative. It's fundamental. It's part of the new sensitivity towards a more human cities. They are doing fantastic changes in both cities. In Paris, Ana Hidalgo just won now a long legal case to recover the highway that was crossing the city besides the river, and now it's back to the people. Now it's being pedestrianized and converted into a linear promenade crossing the city. As well, she's extending the cycling network in a massive way. It's like a light post for us in the urban debate. The same happening in Barcelona. It's a laboratory of new ideas, and we need to look at it very carefully. They are following the idea of the super blocks and recovering streets for the people. The idea is that by 2030, 1 of 3 streets in Barcelona will be pedestrianized thanks to this model of the super blocks. It's a fantastic and very successful strategy. But we were in that momentum when we had another crisis, an unexpected one, the pandemic. And the pandemic represented a second inflection point, because we were locked down, reflecting on our failures, and we discovered that we were too many people, and that was part of their sustainability. Look at this growing curve. David Quammen tells us that it's the same kind of growing rhythm that the plague has. It's amazing, isn't it? I recommend this book we read during the pandemic called Spillover. What's happening is that we are growing in our urban territories and growing in terms of agricultural countryside, and we are reducing the ecosystems and we are hacking them. And by hacking them, there is more and more spillover from viruses, from animals to humans. So we have to be ready for the next pandemic. It will happen quicker than later, no? That's a part of the problem. In just 100 years, we turned down the coin. We passed from being just 30% of people living in cities in 1950 to 70% of the people living in cities by the mid of 21st century. And we discovered that we were vulnerable. And some word that was forgotten in the dictionary became to the top of the agenda. And it's not casual that resiliency is the tag of this conference dedicated to smart cities. It's not by casual that that's happening now. As well, the pandemic demonstrates that it's possible the mixed use. And it's possible even inside the house. It's possible to work and live in the same place. as my colleague Jonathan, a fantastic designer, was doing during the pandemic in the right-hand side photo. We decided to take that forever, and now we are doing a 50-50 hybrid model, going to the studio just half of the week and the rest of the week working remotely. That is reducing our climate footprint in a very strong way. As well, thanks to the virus, we rediscovered the proximity and the shops around the corner. We were not even aware about it. And we discovered as well how unsustainable was the system to provide food that we put together during the industrial times. And I recommend reading Hungry City by this architect, British architect, Caroline Steele, because it's a history of cities from the point of view of food provision, and it's fantastic book, really. But the virus as well removed some kind of people, that bunch of libertarians, climate deniers, and conspiracy theorists that were incentivized to claim against the lack of freedom and go into the street to claim for the, abolition of vaccines because they are going to control us, or more recently, criticizing the 15-minute city because they considered it was a kind of a plan done in Davos or somewhere to restrict our movements and enclose us in the neighborhoods. But we don't need to worry. Let's not be fooled by this, because immediately after that demonstrations in Oxford, the British government organized a survey to consult the people, how was their view about the 15 minutes neighborhoods, and majority of them, 2/3 of the population of Brighton, backed the idea of the 15-minute city. So don't care about that noise. We need to go forward. We need to go forward following this fantastic narrative from Carlos Moreno, which is a very close friend. I think he's probably the Jane Jacobs of the 21st century, and I want to say that I'm very pleased to have Carlos Moreno as one of the sponsors of Club de Lecturas, because he believes in the global debate, and for the second year, he's one of our sponsors there. So the sustainability and resilience of our cities require advancing towards proximity models. That's my thesis today, and I hope that you agree with me. There are places in the world that is more close to this idea, others which are very distant. Maybe North America is a bit distant, but we need to start. If not, we are going to be lost. Let's see some samples that I think are going in the right direction. The first two are projects done by Rodolphe Malian. The third one is not, but it's a very interesting one. I will explain why. The first one was here in Canada. It's East Village in Calgary. And I think it's a demonstration that it's possible to apply the proximity principles in North America with a very successful result. There was a competition, a vacant and empty lots and car parks just beside the downtown. And we proposed to do it in a European blocks style, prioritizing proximity based on healthy ways of mobility and investing in the public realm as the main anchor of all this development. As well, going for the mixed-use approach, and every block has a residential block and a workplace block, because we thought that people could live and work very close to each other. And it worked. It worked and became reality. And Calgary took advantage of that, and we put together a fantastic 15-minute city in Calgary, which is now having a very nice open spaces. You can see how people use the public realm. We invested in this very nice infrastructure, and as well the key anchors and the key facilities around the neighborhood. And suddenly Calgary jumped from 0 to hero. And in the last survey last year, of most livable cities, it was in the third position behind Vienna, Copenhagen, Zurich. It was a fantastic result, so it is possible to do it. The sample number 2 is one of many projects we are doing of regeneration of commuting towns in the UK and in different countries. But I choose just one as a sample. This is to be with the City Council now becoming conscious that we need to transform the commuting towns into proper 15-minute towns, more self-sufficient, with enough equipment, with diversity of housing, and that's what we are doing in various locations, as for example in New Neaton, which is the typical station city in the northwest of London, just an hour and a half journey from the downtown London, and the typical neighborhood based on a train station. Majority of the use is residential, so the typical dormitory town. What are we doing? What are looking at it to convert it into 15-minute city, providing the proper regeneration areas with extra equipment, extra facilities, and new mixed-use developments, improvement of the ring road, getting rid of cars, pushing for the pedestrian and cycle mobility, and as well improving the public realm comfort and safety to promote the use of the street to live and move around. And finally, I want to include in this presentation a regeneration project of a Spanish community in town. And it's important to me because I live there. This is my hometown, Galapagar. And I want to show it because I'm very actively participating in the urban debate. And what I want to say by showing it is that each of you could do the same with your own hometown, because this is a general battle. We need to be part of it. And if we embrace these ideas, we need to transmit it in every area we are dealing with, especially where we live, because we have direct interest. So, Galapagar is a commuting town in the northwest of Madrid. It's about 35 kilometers away towards the mountain, a fantastic environment. At the time, in the second half of the 20th century, it was a destination of people from Madrid building their second residency because of this natural heritage, no? And as well historical heritage. It was a fantastic place. But what happened when people go to build a second residence? That they don't care for the facilities, the health facilities, the educational, the shopping. They just want to have a house and a good highway to connect with Madrid. That's all they need. The result is that we have a city that is very awful, the downtown, because it's very poor, surrounded by very rich resorts, residential resorts, enjoying the landscape, and all the urban fabric is fragmented. This is the typical urban sprawl result in the second ring of a metropolis like Madrid. So how can we do a 15-minute city in this situation? Probably this is the most difficult challenge, and I understand you have a lot of that challenges around in North America too. I have to say that this plan is being done by one of the best architects in Spain, José María Esquiaga, a very good master planner. I'm very proud of him doing this plan for my hometown. He's following the same kind of principles I talk about during this presentation, and he's proposing to reinforce the centrality of this urban fabric in the center of the municipality, providing with diversity of uses, introducing some collective housing, and a series of facilities to complete the offer and make Galapagar more self-sufficient, to break that dormitory town focus it had in the past. So the idea is that the new center is going to be a 15-minute city, with a series of areas that gradually will be pedestrianized and with a ring road around to stop cars to come in, and to put as well a series of collective residence developments around and new equipments, in total 50,000 square meters of them. I live in one of the resorts in the surroundings, and so we are detached from all this process. So together with my neighbors, I put together a proposal of suggestions to be incorporated in the plan to connect better our resort to the new center of the town. And I was lucky enough to convince majority of my neighbors who signed these suggestions, and we presented to the town hall. As well, I'm actively participating in the debate through a blog I put together, and it's very influential, I have to say. I call it Galapagar Futuro. I say it because I think you can do it as well. Each of you can be part of this battle. Finally, I would like to turn to one of the authors that most impacted us in the Club de Lecturas, which is Yuval Noah Harari. Probably you know it very well. If you don't read it yet, let's go and buy it now. And the summary of the idea of this book is that the most powerful weapon to coordinate our actions and produce big changes is our ability to create new narratives and believe collectively on them. So, my proposal is that the resilience and sustainability of our cities requires that we all assume and implement the narrative of proximity. Let's do it. Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody has any question. I was doubtful about this conversation because after the session yesterday, very focused in technology, I'm not focusing in technology, but I'm not denying the importance of technology. But I think there is a previous action to be done. which is to look again to the distribution of uses and the way we build the urban fabric before to superimpose a technological solution. I think that's a must, and we have to do it at least in parallel. Just with the technology, we are not going to sort it out. That's my hypothesis. And I don't know what's your view here, because this is a place where probably cars are centric for all your movements, and it's difficult to think about these possible ways. But I want to believe there is no other route. So I will celebrate if anybody says something about it. Yes, please.
Can we have access to your proposal for Galápagos?
Yes, absolutely.
Please.
Yes. You can consult my blog.
Okay.
It's galapagarfuturo.blogspot.com. It was in my presentation, and you will have all the information there. Yes, please. There.
I completely agree with what you put forth, and it's true that Miami is a car-centric city, but it's interesting because we also are, we have the potential for developing polycentric centers, because we have a series of, let's say, cities that are quite low density. So I think your presentation is, at least resonates very much with me, and I think probably many of the audience. I was just curious, as you're trying to implement the master plan for Galápagos, what have been your greatest challenges in trying to implement change?
Well, it is a great challenge because it's the first time Galápagos is doing a general master plan. You know that with the return of democracy in Spain 40 years ago, they put together a new urban law, and every town hall had to do their own new general master plan, and Galápagos left it apart and didn't do it. And just the new government decided to do it, and the people is a bit concerned, and especially the left wing, because considers that to grow, to make a city more sustainable has no sense. And so we are in the middle of the debate if it's possible to make a city sustainable without growing. And in the case of the dormitory city as Galápagos, I think it's inevitable to grow, to add some density, to add some extra facilities, and I'm in the middle of that discussion. So I'm a defender of the general master plan, but I'm like in a battle, through my blog. But I think we're going to win. Yes, please.
I just want to say it's really amazing how you created that space for people to come together at a global level and discuss these types of things, because we all see it in the different cities, but to be able to understand and get inspired and hear people's creativity to what's going on in their areas, that's basically what we all want to do, right? Get the best that we can and implement and grow in a more mindful way, instead of kind of growing by default because we need more space and we need, living and we need whatever we're trying to achieve. So thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for the examples, because we definitely trying to head in that direction.
Well, thank you very much for that. I'm very excited about Club de Lecturas. It's my activity of the free time. I'm fully dedicated. From Friday afternoons, I abandoned totally Rodolphe and Malian, forget about it. And I'm a board director, but I dedicate a full weekend to this invention I have, and I'm very, very pleased with it. And reality is that I invite you to become part of it as well. By the moment, it's in Spanish. If anybody wants to create an English version, it's welcome to talk to me, and we can do it. Yes, there are a lot of hands. Yes, Ron.
Just clarification, so Club de Lecturas, how does it function? Is it an online platform, social media? So there, it's technology.
Absolutely, and I'm a defender of technology.
So
I'm a defender of technology.
Let's create a new narrative. Actually, technology is a very important instrument in creating this narrative, right?
Absolutely
So
agree.
this is what I want to, when we talked before, and you said, are you sure you want me to lecture? Because I'm not going to be like the technology advocate Oh, I said, yes, of course, this is a very important argument, because also in my mind, I have a wider definition of technology. For instance, perhaps actually the aspiration of the most advanced technology is the disappearance of technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is how we are, when we talk about autonomous cars, we are shifting from heavy infrastructure, train, buses, etc., to something that is much lighter and distributed and almost disappearing, that actually can coexist with pedestrians. So, yes, I think we should talk about the disappearance of technology, but actually it is, again, a form of advanced technology, just like your blogs and...
No, I totally agree, Rodolphe. But the problem is if you have your work 35 kilometers away from your home, that's wrong. And that's what we did in the 20th century. And it's not going to be sorted just with the implementation of a second layer of technology. That's what I'm defending. What I'm saying is that it's not just technology, it's the reformatting of cities to make it more closer, to reduce the distance between the different scenarios of our lives. If we don't do that, we are going to fail in the other solution. So we cannot rely exclusively on the technological salvation idea. I'm a bit ironic about it because I'm a technology fan as well. But if we don't do that, the other change, we are not going to succeed. So that's my view. Of course, I use the technology for the club because it became global thanks to Zoom. We are having meetings by Zoom, and it's fantastic. And we are working by Teams, not by Zoom, but in our company. Because half of the time we are doing remote working, and I think that's a fantastic way to reduce your climate footprint, no? And we are doing it. And I think we need to put together incentives as policy to push companies to do it generally. Why not? It's possible. The pandemic demonstrated that it's possible. So there is ways to change the situation, not just reformatting cities, but implementing technologies. So I'm not questioning that, but I think there are like two fronts, and we need to advance in the two fronts, not just with one. Yes, please.
Jorge, as an architect, that we have similar companies who are working all throughout in different places of the world, and we have a lot of projects right here in Latin America. And when we started several years ago speaking about mixed-use projects and urban renewal and these kind of things, it seemed like it was a trend. Like we're inventing something, but actually it's like inventing the wheel. The origin of cities is proximity, is mixed use, and as you will explain, with all this modern movement, cities start to specialize and you start like creating clusters of different things. So you were wondering if here in the States this is possible. I've been based here in Miami for the past 4 years. From here I manage all our activity in Latin America. But I think it's the same problem we have in Latin America, and you come from Argentina. Actually, Argentina has a more European model of cities, but the rest of Latin America is based on the American urbanism, let's say. And what we have seen in South America and in Mexico and different cities where we're working these kind of projects, it's that when you explain all the benefits of proximity and mixed projects and returning to the origin of cities, people are interested and people start to believe. The thing is that, on the other hand, we need political will. Because if politicians are not willing to move forward in this sense, it will be difficult to move everything. But I think here in the States it's possible. For example, here in Miami, when we came here first with my wife, she's Spanish, we wanted to live, not depend on the car, on this kind of utilities. So you find here in the city, like small cities where this is possible. And I think that when you realize the amount of time you lose commuting from one side to another, you start to understand the importance of proximity, and I think it's possible in the way you bring services to all these places. So it's like a mixed work between citizens, because I think everyone has something to say about it, as you're saying, architects and urban planners and politicians to make all these kind of things possible. But I completely think that it's possible to work through this model, because we're arriving to this kind of examples in Colombia, in Mexico, in Peru, in Bolivia, in other places where we're working.
I totally agree, and I think there is a change in the politicians' side as well. As we saw yesterday with the mayor of Miami, I was very pleased to listen to her. This is being embraced by a lot of different politicians around the world, so we need to continue fighting for it, to convince all of them.
We're trying to.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. Just curious about whether the Galapagar urban development plan, there's also like the input from, what would be the economic development of this area, because most of the underlying forces that shape cities is in economics. People want to work somewhere, but they want to live in a different one.
Totally agree.
So that with the pandemic was quite evident. New York, there are a lot of people that could afford it. They was just, we want to go somewhere else, in which we are not as restricted, in the type of density they were living in. So they're moving to some other places, such as Florida. And I guess that economics play a very
Crucial.
intense role. And we're talking about a lot of technology over development ideas about the city, but if we don't rethink about, how economy is distributed and how these places are attached to big metropolitan areas, because that's where the jobs are, that's where the infrastructure is, and that's where the means for people to, develop and have a better life are. It's very difficult, even if you have a really nice urban plan for a small village, people will, the work will be there. They have to go there because most of the people that have a job, they have to be skilled on those jobs. I mean, remote working is something for a small percentage.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
How do you are approaching that economic development front? Is it being considered in this urban development plan?
Absolutely, yes. What we need to do is try to relocalize employment in the local city, And what we are doing here in the plan, well, not me, but the architects are proposing an industrial park, a very large one, in the north of the municipality that is going to generate local jobs. And as well, the revitalizing of the center of town is going to create jobs, because by pedestrianizing the downturn, we are going to improve the retail, and that's going to create local jobs. That's the plan. It's a gradual process, but we need to start. I totally agree with you. We need to relocalize the distribution of work. Well, thank you very much.